Hi, thank you all for being here this morning. Really excited to come all the way out here to get to talk to all of you. I feel like in introducing myself, if you want to copy my information down, especially since my email is right there for the thing one, thing two. My name is Emile Krutzik. I'm the Ethnic Studies Educator at the Oregon Historical Society. My role there is to create curriculum using all of our resources in the museum and in our research library, as well as provide professional developments for educators. Before I worked at OHS, I was a classroom educator for a little over 11 years. I worked in Wisconsin and I worked in Oregon in urban, suburban, and even rural school districts, so sort of seen all of it. And another fun fact about me is I have two different sized thumbs. It's hard to see from there if you want to zoom in for the film. They are differently sized, so there's some fun facts about me, and you get a freebie. I'm here today to share primary sources from the Oregon Historical Society, and it's really no matter your level of experience. I'm going to go through, let me go ahead to this slide first, some educational opportunities that we have, pre-made curriculum that's based on primary sources that you can just use on Monday, as well as digital resources for places to find a specific primary source that you're needing for your classroom. So a little bit about the Oregon Historical Society, or OHS, as it's much easier to say, is that at its core, OHS is committed to telling the diverse history of Oregon since time immemorial to today, and making inclusive history available to everyone. What that means for education is we are supporting the new social science standards integrated with ethnic studies that will become the new standards in 2026 through our curriculum and creating new curriculum and realigning our existing curriculum with those standards, as well as providing educators with adaptable resources and PD about our resources like today, and with a specific focus on trying to do outreach to all of Oregon. So again, really happy to be here in La Grande today. All right, starting with the educational opportunities, and this, you can sort of follow along with this first handout in the second packet, maybe, in your folder on the left side. It says Educator Resources at the Oregon Historical Society at the top. I'm gonna talk about a lot of this stuff, except for the curriculum, which will come later. So, right now, we have some educational opportunities such as tours, Oregon History Day, which is a part of National History Day, and then traveling trunks. So first up is school tours. They are truly free. I know it's a big ask for some of you to come all the way to Portland in the downtown park blocks, but if you're wanting to come, we will make it happen for you. Shout out to, we had one educator this school year come from Condon. So if you want it to happen, it can happen. We will also reimburse you for transportation. We have two permanent exhibits that are on Oregon history, and then opening in June will be a new permanent exhibit about Portland history. And then we have traveling exhibits that are changing throughout the year that you can check our website for. To request a tour, there's a form for you to fill out online that's linked there. Or if you go to ohs.org/education, you'll find it there as well. So that's how you sign up for a tour. The second thing to talk about is Oregon History Day, which is a project-based curriculum that allows students to choose a topic based on a theme. This year's theme is Turning Points in History. Then they create a project that could be a documentary, a paper, a website, a skit or play, and there's one that I'm forgetting. Exhibit or website. I forget which one of those now I said. But it's also very flexible and adaptable for educators. You decide how to bring it into your classroom. Some options that other schools use is some do it as a unit in their classroom. Some do it as like an elective class. Some do it as an after-school program. There's also more information about this on this Oregon History Day Quick Facts, which is the second page. There's also a little bit on the back of this page. Once students complete a project, they have the chance to participate in the state competition that is always held in Salem. And then if they do well there, they can also advance to National History Day competition in Washington, D.C. If you're still a little confused on what Oregon History Day is, the easiest explanation is it's like a science fair, but for history. So it might be easier to think of it that way. Some ways that we're supporting educators and students, again, from all over, because we want it to be Oregon History Day and we want as many students that want to participate, is we have revised resources on our website to help you implement it in the classroom if you'd like to. And then scholarships to cover registration and travel fees to both the state competitions and the national competition. If students want to come, we want to make that available to them. Another thing is on our competition this year is April 13th, which is a Saturday, and we're looking for volunteer judges. So if you're interested at all, you don't have to know the content of the project, because the projects can be about anything that's a turning point in history, so you won't know everything. But what we're looking for is judges who can foster a love of history, respect every student, offer feedback via a rubric, and most importantly, celebrate students. And that's all things that you do every day in your classroom. So we would love to have you. In exchange, there's an option to earn PDUs, and you also get a chance to sort of see how History Day works, see some of the projects, so that way if you're thinking about doing it in your own school, you have some idea of the end goal. If you're interested in this, there's some contact information there. Also, the fourth page, again, gives more information about, it says judges needed for Oregon History Day. So please sign up. We would love to have you if you can come to Salem on a Saturday. Finally, we have traveling trunks. You can sort of think of this as a unit in a box. The trunks are available on a variety of topics and are aligned with the standards. They cost $25 a week and can be rented for up to 2 weeks. We do also have some that can be shipped out. To give you an idea of what's in the boxes, we try to make them or align them with primary sources as much as possible. So it's a way to bring objects that are primary sources into your classroom. And I have an example. We are making a traveling trunk on the Chinese diaspora in Oregon. And in our collection, we have a shirt that was owned by a Chinese railroad worker. And so Dr. Chelsea Rose, if you know her from Southern Oregon University, she came in and analyzed the shirt and has a whole video about it, which you can watch on that blog post. And so we created a replica, including there's a part in the video where she talks about that there's these weird flaps that are in the shirt, and we made the weird flaps. So this will be in the trunk, and it's something that students can see, hold, touch, and then watch the video and analyze it. Yeah. They're for your fingers?
Yeah, so that if you're having to get it somewhere tight, so the shirt just needs to come off.
Oh.
You might hurt yourself.
Okay. I'll talk more about. Talk to you later. I'm not quite sure how that would work yet, but I believe that you know something about it. So she wasn't sure. Here's the topics that we currently have for traveling trunks. And then coming soon is the Chinese diaspora of Oregon, Oregon's Black Pioneers. Those for sure will be ready by next school year. And then we're hoping Lewis and Clark will be back. We needed to update that one. No one looked at it in 20 years. And the ones that with an asterisk and all of the coming soon ones will be shippable. So again, you don't have to drive to Portland and come to OHS and pick up a trunk. Okay, again, wanted to pause and give you a moment to just sort of look through what I've talked through, the educator resources, tours, we'll get to curriculum. If you have any questions about traveling trunks or Oregon History Day that I can answer right now.
I got a traveling trunk.
Yes.
What's your timeline for crafting the one, the Chinese diaspora one?
The Chinese diaspora should be ready by fall of for next school year, yeah. Yes?
If we're interested in one of those, does it have like a link where we can see what's in it before it's shipped?
That is something we are working on. Right now, these ones, it sort of has like one picture that you can see, and maybe there's a little bit of a description. But for the newer ones, we're gonna post the curriculum online so that you can see like what it covers and what's in there. Also, I didn't mention, again, you just request the traveling trunks. You can either click this link and it'll take you to that form, or again, it's always on our website. Yes?
Do you guys ever take ideas for new trunks?
Sure, what's your idea?
The 555th parachute infantry battalion, or black soldiers in Oregon during World War II?
Oh, okay. I will write that down.
I kind of wrote my best thesis on that.
Okay, a little bit biased, but yeah.
They were located in Netherlands for most of 1925.
Okay. Yeah, and there would be probably some good objects to go along with being a soldier.
I know April 12th, during a presentation, it's like the Senate 21st Street at PSS.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else before I move on to curriculum?
Another idea.
Yeah.
We're from the Dallas, so we were saying one on the Columbia Gorge would be kind of cool. Just
Ooh,
like the
yeah.
in general information.
Yes.
And general history would be kind of cool. That
And-
covers a lot of this.
Yeah, we did have some that were tribal trunks, but again, we pulled those as they go through tribal revisions, which are taking a long time. So hopefully those will be back, but yeah, just the one about the gorge. The Oregon's Black Pioneers has a lesson about York, so that sort of talks about the Columbia River, but not a lot. Thank you for your ideas. Again, we're always interested, certainly, in what educators actually want in the classroom. Speaking of, let's move on to our curriculum. Like I mentioned, all of it is based around inquiry and analysis of primary sources, as well as secondary sources. And it aligns with the new social science standards integrated with ethnic studies. So the first one I want to talk about is called Experience Oregon History, or EOH. This one is based on our permanent exhibit, Experience Oregon, which just covers the history of Oregon since time immemorial to today. But with the adoption of the new standards, we realized that there was a need for standalone curriculum. The curriculum was originally created to support museum visits. So we took that part out. You can still come visit the museum if you want to, but it's not a requirement of doing this curriculum. It's standalone. There are scaffolds for students. There's step-by-step instructions for you, background information. There's a slide deck for every lesson. So we really tried to make it as easy as possible for you to just insert it into your classroom wherever it fits. Our rationale in developing it is that Oregon history is hard history. There's a history of racism, exclusion, and violence, but there's also always been people and communities that have resisted that oppression. And so we wanted to focus on those stories to really empower students to realize that they can make change in their communities. Here is an overview. Again, it's K-12, so here's the breakdown of the units. And the essential questions. Again, the links will take you straight to that page. What I'm going to do now is sort of just very quickly go or do a demo activity from each one of these, so you'll get a sense sort of what it's about. So starting with kindergarten, the focus of the unit is on how objects can help us learn about other people. And so during the 7 lessons, students are practicing evaluating primary source photos and objects using their observation skills. And then their final project is to have a classroom museum, which I love. We'll be demoing a quick activity from lesson 3 where students are making observations about different objects that are in our Experience Oregon exhibit. So here is that object. I love this one. Starting with observation, you want to ask students some of these questions. What color is it? What shape is it? Is it shiny? Does it look smooth? Does it look like it's made by hand or by machine? So let's just shout out, like, what are some things that you observe?
Made by hand.
Made by hand, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, is there an ice cream cone up here or something? Anything else? Yeah, a kindergartner would definitely say ice cream cone. That is fine. You can be the obnoxious kindergartner. I love it.
Is it covered with paint or material?
Yeah, maybe paint, or like it does look shiny, right? So,
It's almost like
a lacquer. All right, I'm gonna give you a chance to turn and talk and now make a guess using evidence of what you think this is used for. So maybe it's ice cream cones, but turn and talk for like 30 seconds. Anybody want to share what their thought is? Yes?
I think it's a music box, and underneath that comes it's a little dancing.
Oh, okay. So it's about like sort of based on your knowledge. Yeah, the hinge. Okay, one more guess. Any other guesses? Yes?
Knife box and knife sharpener?
Oh, so the knife sharpener is in the cone part?
It is the cone.
Oh, it is the cone. Okay. I'm going to tell you now what it is, if you're ready. It is a suitcase. It's hard to tell what the size is, but it is sort of like, you know, suitcase size. And the cone is for hats. So this is a suitcase. You called it? Yeah. Okay. This suitcase was owned by Moibok Hin, who was known as Portland's Chinese millionaire. And the hat he's wearing it might have like a pointy thing on the top. And so that's what would go in here. He was also the Chinese consulate for the West Coast at one point. So good job if you guessed it was a hat box, because that's what it is. So that's an example of the kindergarten lesson for grades 1 through 2. They're focusing a little bit wider on how can people help to make their community successful. Where am I? My notes. They're building on their primary and secondary source analysis of photos and objects using observation and inferences. They're also recording oral histories and then creating a book using their interviews of community members. So our example lesson today is from lesson 2, which is where they are analyzing primary source photographs and inferring what people are doing to help their community. This is one of my favorite photographs because it's one of those that the more you look at it, the more you see, the different things you see. So again, taking a moment to observe, like what's one thing you notice someone doing, or choosing one person from the photo and looking closely at their face and body, what emotions do they feel? So yeah, it might be easier to see on your screen. In a moment, I'll give you a chance to turn and talk about like what you notice, and then talking about these 2 questions as well. What do you think is happening in this photograph, and how are these people helping their community? So go ahead and turn and talk with somebody. What's one thing you notice about this photograph, or something that you talked about with your partner?
A lot of children.
A lot of children, yes. And I think I heard over here that they seem to be happy.
Except for that kid on the left.
Oh, yep, see. You know, I've never noticed that kid before, so there's always the one, yeah. Anything else that people noticed? Yeah.
There's not a lot of women in this photograph.
Yeah, I used to think that there was no women, but there's that, right, at least one here. Did you saw more than that?
Her, and then like the one between the 2 men behind her is maybe a woman.
Okay.
And then there's a couple more on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It's not very clear.
There's 2 in the back over on this side.
Oh, yeah, I see them now.
Yeah.
Did anybody recognize the building in the photo?
City Hall.
City Hall in Portland. So I heard some people saying that clearly they're demonstrating about clean rivers in Portland. The man with the jaunty hat is Mayor Joseph Carson, and this is from 1935. So I'm not quite sure why they were in a band as a way to make their community better, or why they're so happy about it, but that's the story. Moving on to grades 3 through 5, this one focuses on indigenous peoples and how their cultures have thrived in Oregon since time immemorial to today. Piggybacking off what Dave was talking about with the tribal history, shared history curriculum, that is one that we want you to use first. And then this is sort of a supplement to that. It also fits 3rd grade geography standards. So in this, students are building their primary and secondary source analysis of photos and objects. Now they're looking at a lot of objects that maybe they haven't seen before. There's an emphasis on tribal culture and how it continues today. And for their final project, they make a map and then do a speech about a contemporary indigenous person, event, group, or place. So we'll be looking at lesson 2, which talks about water, and also is more object analysis. So this is something else from our collection. One quick note about language. What we've heard from tribal advisors is they prefer the word belonging to words like object or artifact. Belonging shows that it's still connected to people and still used in the community, whereas artifact sort of removes people from that. So that's why you see that word belonging, and you'd wanna, if you're teaching this, push students to use that word belonging as well. So here is our next object. How would you describe what it looks like? What materials do you think it's made out of? How do you think people used it? What's your evidence? And then what does this belonging tell us about how indigenous peoples and cultures have thrived in Oregon since time immemorial to today? So again, I'll give you a chance to turn and talk and maybe get some ideas. Go ahead. Observations, what you think it is and why. Hat in the back.
Looks like a halibut hook.
How do you know it's specific? That is so specific.
So the top half, typically made out of cedar. It's a light, dense wood. Bottom half would be a denser wood so that it would float up. And they used a lot of science behind the size so that they didn't catch one that was too small, but they wanted it to develop. For sustainability reasons, so they get them later. But they didn't want them too large because it can pull you in. Because halibuts get pretty big. And I could be wrong about this, but I think the females are larger than the males. So for sustainability reasons, they wanted to catch males so that you still have continuing population. And we see the artwork the artwork's typically on the cedar side of the top part.
Raise your hand.
Depending on the artwork.
Yeah, raise your hand if you thought it was something to do with fish. Okay, you're all correct, but he was the most correct. Like, that's actually more than even I was gonna say, so great job. It is cedar on the top, it is for halibut, and yeah, we assumed the sustainability part of different size, so great job. Moving on to grades 6 through 8, the focus becomes more on looking at primary source texts as well as photographs and objects. Students are exploring how laws protect and limit people's rights. And what else do I want to say about this? It ends in a gallery walk and a Socratic seminar about the essential question. So we will be doing a quick activity from lesson 2 where they learn about segregation in Oregon by analyzing early national and state laws. So here are some laws that we're gonna read through, and then students would write or circle P for protects or L for limits. Since there's a big group of us, let's do 1 finger up for protects and 2 fingers for limits. Okay, I'll read a couple of these. So in May 2nd, 1843, Oregon settlers meet in Champouie to create a provisional government to last until, quote, such time as the United States of America can extend their rule over us. So 1 if that protects, or 2 if that limits. Okay, we actually already have some debate. I think most people are saying protects, but a couple people are saying limits. Does anybody want to say why they said it limits? Yes.
If your individual rights are unlimited, governments are there to constrict your rights so that, one, they protect other people from you, but you also limit other people's rights.
Yeah. Also, depending on how you teach early Oregon territory, Oregon country history, you might know that this is at the part where they're trying to decide if it's going to belong to the U.S. or belong to the British. So that could be another way you see that it's limiting, because if you're a British citizen and suddenly you're under the rule of the United States government, that maybe is a little bit limiting. Let's try the next one. Oregon settlers again meet in Champouie and pass a temporary plan for the provisional government, including the organic laws of Oregon, which prohibit slavery. So protects, limits. Yeah. Okay. We've got one person who's doing both. Why are you doing both? A couple people doing both.
Doing both, I guess it depends on the perspective. Individual rights to be not enslaved, or right, the slave holder, in order to care.
Right, and that was certainly a debate that was happening at the time, is slaveholders were saying, or enslavers were saying, we have rights. But yeah, probably most of you said protects people. And then the last one, the provisional government in June 18th, 1844 passes Oregon's first black exclusion law. It states that blacks who tried to settle in Oregon would be publicly whipped, 39 lashes repeated every 6 months until they left Oregon. So it protects or limits. Yeah. I think that one is a little bit, so hopefully you can see though that some of them are debatable, some are a little bit more straightforward, and it's a really interesting way for students to learn about some of these difficult early laws that existed in our Constitution.
Were they trying to keep the conflict between the North and the South out of Oregon territory?
There are, I think, a lot of different reasons, and certainly I think some of this comes from trying to, find a compromise between people who were enslavers. Yeah. There's also a lot of arguments being made at the time from... people are settlers who are coming and want, a new opportunity feel that having enslaved people...
They didn't want to share the land with blacks.
They didn't want to have to compete with free labor. So that was a big part of it. Or share land. So a lot of different things. Not an easy question to answer. Finally, for Experience Oregon History, we have the high school unit, which focuses on how to be civically active and how community members can improve their community's experience. So they're researching historic freedom fighters, and then at the end they pick an issue and create an action project to address it. So we're gonna look at lesson 3, and I'll just sort of show you what it looks like. Students will research historic Oregon freedom fighters and use primary sources to explain their activism. So we have created a list of historic Oregon freedom fighters for students to choose from, or you to assign for students, and then they're filling out this in a Google slide. So bullet points about them, and then you can see that they have to analyze 2 primary sources and explain the significance for their historic freedom fighter. In addition, there's still more. We also have the Analyzing Primary Sources packets. This was sort of created as a companion to Experience Oregon History, but you can also use them separately. Each packet has 3 photos, objects, or documents from OHS's collection, and they're a little bit less structured. It just gives you an essential question, some discussion questions, some ideas of how to set things up, and a lot of extension activities. But it's not quite as rigid as the Experience Oregon History curriculum. Here again is an overview of all of the Analyzing Primary Sources, so you get a little bit more ideas of what are the 3 things in each of them. And again, the blue links take you straight to that packet. We're gonna look at grades 3 through 5. And the resource is Native Americans Fish at Celilo Falls. So just double checking, raise your hand if you know what Celilo Falls is. Okay, I think I see maybe a few people that didn't have their hand up, so really quickly, Celilo Falls is a very important trade and fishing center for Native people since time immemorial, and then when the Dalles Dam was created in the 1950s, it flooded the Celilo Falls and it does not exist anymore. So in this, we're gonna start with the primary source photograph and then add on to what we understand by looking at an oral history, a video, and comparing to a contemporary photograph. So here is the photograph. Turn and talk about what you notice in this photo. I think I heard some people over here saying that they noticed people were tied down. Oh, wow. At least you can see this person is. And I think that goes with possibly someone up here. Like, what do you notice about the water? Right. Don't go swimming in that, for sure. One more observation from anybody? Yes?
Dip nets.
Dip nets, okay. I have definitely looked at this, and I've heard people say, oh, are these like rakes? Because they can't, you know, if you don't know what a dip net looks like, you're not gonna know what it is. But getting students to observe and then think about what's going on in this photo, who are the people, what do you think is at the end of the poles? So this is Native Americans fishing. The next thing you would do with students is you're gonna listen to Louis Pitt, who belongs to the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, describe memories from Celilo Falls. You'd watch it twice. And specifically here we're getting a lot of different senses. So thinking about sound, smell, touch, sight, what does he add to our understanding? So hopefully the sound works. We will just watch it one time. This is also from the Confluence Project, which is a really great resource for Native videos, and they also have lessons. So it's another really great resource.
Oh gosh, I always was excited to go there. It's just a little guy, and I was the youngest with two older sisters, and had to sit in the middle. And I had very bad eyes, and I could kind of see something was almost remarkable as Celilo, which was below Celilo, where the river narrowed down to like 50 or 60 yards wide. The mighty Columbia, 50 yards wide, and it just shot through with the water. We weren't allowed to go down there as kids because it was far too dangerous, and but it was amazing. I see pictures of it now, but I never got to get close. But you could hear the growl, the groaning of the river. Just you could hear it from probably a quarter mile away. It just really rumbled, and the smell. You could smell fish and smell the kind of the clean mist of the area. And it was cooler down there when you got close to the falls itself. And just, you know, they'd holler when they'd catch a fish, and then you see them. Because in those days, you know, you really had a challenge when you caught a fish, because that's their element down there in the water, and you didn't like it at all to be caught. And so it was a battle to watch the fishermen pull those big fish up. So it was incredible, and then they'd get them on up, and they reach over, and their stick would be right there waiting for them, and boom, knock them in the head, and then throw them in their box. And everybody else would just kind of nod their heads around. Good one there, good sized fish. Goody for you, or teichish does. The Warmspringers say that's good for you.
So with students, I would probably talk about the different senses that he talks about, but since we're sort of moving through this as educators, I just want you to turn and talk with somebody really quick about how his description now enhances your understanding of that original photo. Like, what new information did you learn, or like reinforces what you already knew? So go ahead and talk. We have another video that we would watch next with students. This one is silent. It's, I believe, from probably the 40s or 50s. And it is Native fishermen at Celilo Falls on the Columbia River. So as you're watching it, note it is silent, so the sound isn't the sound is working. There just is no sound. Thinking about, what do you recognize in the video from the photograph? What new things do you see that you did not see in the photo? And thinking just again about how it's adding to your understanding. All right. Go ahead, yeah, turn and talk. What now makes more sense? What did you learn from the video that wasn't in the photograph? I always love that video, you see like the rope, them in the box. Like, I guess that's how they got out there, or if someone knows differently about what they're doing in that, but always very interesting to compare those two. The last part of this activity is, again, to bring it to today and seeing how tribal people are still continuing their old ways. So looking at the photograph really quickly, you just think to yourself, what's the same as the photograph that we've looked at as at the video, and what's different? Of course, how can you tell one is from the past and one is more recent? Students are going to say this one's in color. And any questions that you have. Right. Different gear, still the same dip net, and then we've still got the club, is what I've noticed. Oh, it's a different dip net? Okay.
It doesn't have a closure on it. The other one.
Okay. Thank you. You can tell dip nets are not my area of expertise. All right, moving on to the next curriculum that we have. It's called Racing to Change. This was a collaboration that we did with the Oregon Black Pioneers. We worked directly with Zachary Stocks, who's their executive director, to create these lessons. In the lessons, the focus is on the collective power of Black Oregonians and the actions that they took that led to change. Students are analyzing the impacts of different types of change actions, such as protest, boycotts, and passing laws. Each lesson includes a slideshow, it includes editable worksheets, and it includes answer keys. So again, the goal was for us to make something that you can very easily use in the classroom on Monday. We really wanted to make this as well to highlight the similarities and differences in Oregon's civil rights movement to the greater civil rights movement. Here is an overview of all the lessons. Also, to clarify, this is for grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. The lessons have a touch on the same topics, but they do use slightly different resources that have been scaffolded for those grade levels. So if you teach 6th through 8th, use that version. If you teach 9 through 12, use that version. But you're still getting at the same topics. And we're gonna look quickly at lesson 7, which looks at Portland Public Schools' plan to desegregate schools and what the Black community did to resist. So here's just a quick overview. Students are gonna analyze, one of the things they do is analyze these maps and compare it to PPS's proposed desegregation plan. And again, our essential questions are, how did Black Oregonians use their collective power to make change during the civil rights era, and how impactful were those changes? So here is our first map. Take a moment, what do you notice about the map? What patterns do you see? Why do you think this map was created? What do you wonder? All right. Two people to share out something they noticed or why they think it was created, summarizing the map. Yes?
So I look at this. This is, we're showing the boundaries, we're showing kind of where the racial makeup is of the area. And
Yeah.
just to remind us, they're heavily located in just a few areas.
Right, yes. So yeah, looking at the key, it's specifically focusing on the percentage of white students. So this is like an outline of the Portland Public Schools boundary. And then anything that's shaded darker would be a higher concentration of whatever at this point they're considering non-white students. Yeah.
So you're from Portland, so you're familiar. I'm just trying to figure, so is that 20 to 30% like Legacy, Emmanuel, that neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a connection we want students to make, which I know can be harder if they're not as familiar with Portland, but the shaded area would be like the Albina district, where Emmanuel Hospital is. All right, here is the second map that goes with it. Again, we will compare them in a moment, but try to just focus on observing this map, the patterns, why you think it was created, the information it gives.
Looks like they're draining the north and south and ignoring up here and ignoring the.
Like, because of the arrows? Like that they're pointing sort of out from this.
Pulling them into the city.
Yeah.
They're putting them out in the rural areas, so they're not really segregated.
Yeah. Well, it's not the rural areas, it's the white areas. So this is, 93 to 100% white. This is all Portland.
Oh, okay, that's all.
Yeah. Right. This is like the hills. Sylvan, Chapman is the Swifts in like Northwest. Yeah, the map can be hard to read. Something else that you wanted to say?
I just wondered if there's a layer of socioeconomic status.
Say that again.
Socioeconomic status of the three-point areas.
Yeah.
Or majority of
Right.
I'm wondering if that is the least.
The least
The lowest.
socioeconomic status. Yeah, and that I'm not super sure how yeah, I think this is definitely the highest. You grew up in Portland, Andrew. Where's the lowest?
So it's
Probably.
really, I mean, it's interesting looking at the map. We were just having a conversation. You kind of have to know Portland to be able to interpret the map and what was being attempted here. And I was in grade school at the time, but like when you see Ainsworth and Chapman, those are the highest income areas of Portland. And this looks like a busing strategy. It was. And some reciprocity with the Albina neighborhood. What's interesting though, also with this map is that the real divide in the city is the east-west divide on the Willamette River in terms of socioeconomics and also in terms of race. And that's where the concentration really seems to be, that east-west dynamic, rather than the north-south dynamic on the east side, which I think is curious and interesting.
Yeah. So I do know that this map is a little bit harder to read if you don't know Portland. The goal that we want students to see is this area where that is majority non-white is also the area that is getting bussed out.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of arrows going into that, which aligns with what was called the Blanchard Plan, and that was the idea of, well, we don't want to have segregated schools, so we're going to bus the non-white kids out to the white areas. Yeah.
I don't know if this is just me, but it seems like by their emblems, they've got light schools and dark schools. And did they bus out to make those dark schools? And then in the middle of it, they made this white space and put white school?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like that, these are shaded in, and the ones. I don't know why, because it doesn't say that on the key. It just talks about the arrows. So I'm not sure. Did you have an idea?
Well, no, I was saying I agree that it does seem like it would be an intentional choice.
Yeah.
The shade and stuff.
Yeah. I do know that they were also trying to close schools at the time, so maybe that's what that's referencing, is that the unshaded ones are being closed. Anyway, if we're comparing the two maps, we sort of already did this part, is students should get at what the Portland Public School Board plan was. And how do you think different communities reacted to this? How do you think the black community that lived in this neighborhood where all the kids are getting bussed out of felt about it?
We wanted the kids closer to their neighborhood.
Yeah, they really, and so that's how the black community reacted. What did they do about it? They created an organization called the Black United Front. So this is getting into more primary sources that students analyze later on in the lesson. This is one of my favorite posters. So one of the things they did is they successfully boycotted the schools. Black kids just didn't show up to school that day on May 19th. And then the other photograph is them protesting a PPS school board meeting. Just to give you an idea, that photograph is from 1979 or 1980. Like this is not, we're not talking 60s, or like 60s, early 70s. This is happening in the late 70s, early 80s. The last curriculum that I want to talk about is called It Did Happen Here. This is for grades 9 through 12. It is created in conjunction with the podcast, It Did Happen Here, and the Western State Center. For those of you who haven't heard the podcast, it's great. It's also not super long. It focuses on the rise of hate crimes and hate groups in Oregon in the 80s and 90s. And how they sought to establish themselves in Oregon, how the authorities and the mainstream media ignored all of that, and then how everyday people fought and organized together to stop those groups, specifically after the 1988 murder of Ethiopian immigrant Mulugeta Serra. So again, it's for 9 through 12. It helps students make connections between the exclusionary laws of the past and how that continues to impact Oregon today. It looks at different ways activists organized and their impacts using quotes and clips from the podcast. And then there's also from the Western State Center, there's a great toolkit to help students identify examples of white nationalism and strategies to counter it. Again, here's an overview. It's 6 lessons with 2 that are optional. You can click up there to access it on our website. We're gonna look briefly at the first one, which is sort of a mini DBQ that allows students to get background knowledge on what was happening in Oregon history that sort of led us to what happened in the 1980s and 1990s. So here is the first document. Again, let's hold up one finger if you're familiar with this part of the state constitution, and 2 fingers if you're not as familiar. Again, either is fine. Okay, we're sort of 50-50. This is one of the exclusionary laws. So this is setting up in Oregon's constitution from 1857 that then was ratified by the Congress in 1859. Let me get my notes here. It said that no new black residents could be in the state, could make contracts or own real estate, and it was approved by Oregon voters by a wide margin. In the same constitution, they also outlawed slavery. So we see these juxtapositions. It was nullified by the 14th Amendment. So this was only in existence from 1857-59 until 1868, but it was not removed from the state constitution until the 1920s. And then this is the second one to help, again, students see connections. This is Oregon census data from 2020. I'll give you a moment to look at it. And then go ahead and turn and talk. What connections do you notice between this graph and the previous document, and what can that tell us about Oregon history? Hopefully in your small group discussions, you are making some connections, and this gives you sort of a taste of what this first lesson from It Did Happen Here is like. As Dave was also talking about, these workshops are always sort of a fire hose of information because we don't have a ton of time to go through everything. So I apologize. That was a lot of curriculum. I'll give you a minute to reflect and talk with people around you for any ideas of where could our curriculum, whether that's Experience Oregon History, the Analyzing Primary Sources, Racing to Change, or It Did Happen Here, where could that fit into your current scope and sequence? So a minute to look back through it, talk, whatever you need to do for a minute. Thank you for talking. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for your engagement so far. We've just got a little bit left. There is one more curriculum that I wanted to share. The reason I separated it was because this is not created by Oregon Historical Society. It's created by the New York Historical Society, but it is housed on our website. And it is called Women and the American Story, or WAMS. And as you can see, there are a lot of different units, and in the units, there are primary sources, there are biographies that highlight how women have, the important contributions women have made to US history. So I really love it because it does go from the 1400s all the way to today, or just about today. And I know, again, for elementary, maybe you're like, I don't know how I would use this. It is more geared towards secondary, but I think it can be adaptable for elementary. So I'm going to show 2 quick examples of how I might use it. Here is for elementary. If you're teaching about colonial America, this is an example of an indentured servant contract for Elizabeth Fortune. One of the great things about WAMs is that whenever they have a primary source, they always have the document text, and then they have this summary. So that's what you see over here. So I think this really helps make any primary source accessible for all students. I'll give you a second to read through the summary. So in this resource, Children at Work, that's the focus of it. You can find this document, you can find this summary. There's also more background information for you on who these people are. And then discussion questions such as this. What does this contract reveal about the economic opportunities available to young women in the colonies? Why are indenture contracts valuable historical resources? So even for elementary, there's something for you. And then for secondary, I had to choose Barbie because it's Women's History Month and it's Oscars month. So this is from the Growth and Turmoil section. And then within that, it's sort of the Cold War period. But I really like this one because it could hit so many different themes. This could be about women's rights. This could be about consumerism. This could be about media and body image issues. This could be about discrimination because we're comparing Barbie and Christie. And I did not know this, but Mattel chose not to create a black doll named Barbie until 1980. Instead, they had Christie. Why do you think they did this? What did this say about Barbie and what she represents? So I think students would be really interested in having a good discussion about this. There's also so many more discussion questions that I could not fit on this slide that were all great. So please check out Women and the American Story and see what resources they have and how you can use them in your classroom. We're now moving on to finding digital resources for your classroom, finding primary sources that you need. So for a complete list, if you go to ohs.org/education and click on digital resources, that's all of what I'm going to talk about. But here we go. Oregon Encyclopedia is sort of the textbook of Oregon history. It has articles about the people, places, events, that make Oregon, Oregon. They're all written by historians and they're updated pretty regularly. There's also a primary source packet for educators to use. Oregon History Project is similar in that it's written by historians. It also has articles, but the articles just focus on one photograph or artifact or object from our collection and give more information about it. And then Oregon History Wayfinder and TimeWeb just take the entries from Oregon Encyclopedia and Oregon History Project and share them in different ways. Wayfinder does it by map, so you can search by location. And TimeWeb, it creates an interactive timeline. For more information on how to use these, I do have some slides that sort of talk you through the guide, which we don't have time to go over, but I included them so you could look at them later. Again, how might you use these in the classroom? Here's an idea for elementary students. A lot of the Oregon Encyclopedia entries come with photographs. So if you're teaching about communities, and you might have the question, how did our communities change? Why has it changed? I would go and look at an entry from Geography and Places, because there's a lot of towns. LeGrand is there. Your small town might be there. You don't know, there's a lot of them. And then choosing at least one photo that would help students answer the essential question, and then filling out the elementary primary source analysis worksheet, which is included in your packet. We are now on this page that says Oregon Encyclopedia Activity at the top. There's all of the instructions that I just went over, and then the back side is the worksheet. So this is, again, adaptable for you in any way. For secondary, again, you could have students look at how people, groups, events have shaped Oregon history. Again, I would go to themes on the webpage and pick a topic for students to research or have them, or assign one for them. And then they read through the entry and then create a slideshow, which is also included in the packet, about whatever that person, group, or event is known for, and then analyzing primary sources. Okay, sort of, I liked what Dave did, and especially because in Oregon Encyclopedia, you can really get lost and go down some rabbit holes. But I wanted to give you 5 minutes to search the Oregon Encyclopedia and find a source that might work for your class. Again, some ideas from me is to use the search bar if you have something in specifically that you're looking for. If you search Chinese, things will come up. If you search Japanese, things will come up. Or browse the themes page. Also, if you click show all results, let me show you what I mean. So explore and then entries by themes is one. Or if you want to just search and just do something like Native American, up here where it says show all results, it will show you both from the Oregon Encyclopedia and the Oregon History Project. So you can see now it added this one below it. So I'll give you 5 minutes to sort of explore on your own and try to find something that might be useful. I did choose this photo intentionally because I feel like you found the perfect resource, just like these kids are waiting for cotton candy. It's sort of the same feeling when you're like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. So hopefully you get there. If not, keep searching. I do have a few more things that I want to share. Another way to learn about Oregon history and get access to primary sources is through the Oregon Historical Quarterly, which is a scholarly journal that focuses on scholarship that's been traditionally silenced in Oregon. It's excellent background reading for educators, a little bit difficult for students to read, but within the articles there are really great primary sources from art collections or from other places. We have many free articles online, so if you click this link, it will take you to the OHQ page on our website, and then there should be a tab for free articles, and click on that. Or if you become a member, which educators get a 10% discount, you'll get a free subscription to the OHQ, and it'll just get delivered to your house. So there's my plug. One of the issues that we love to highlight is from winter 2019, we had a special issue focused on white supremacy and resistance, and it focused on the different ways that white supremacy has what it's looked like in Oregon throughout history, and what it means. Within those, there were these primary source interludes. This is one example, which I thought was fitting because it's from the LeGrand Observer in 1904. And so you can use these in the classroom. There is a primary source activity you can click on that gives a little bit more detail. But basically, I would use this as an observe, reflect question with students. So observing this ad, what do you notice? Yeah.
A lot of white health only. They're like really happy that it's just white conservatives.
Right. They also have it at like it's repeated.
Yeah. Hey, we have white conservatives and white dishwashers.
Yes.
Right in the middle, you are certain that no Chinaman has prepared your food.
Yes. Yeah. Polite service assured. Moving on. Reflecting, why do you think this was made? What do you think was happening when this was made? So we have a date, 1904, in LeGrand. You can just think about it. We don't have to answer this part. But having students talk about that. And then finally, what does this document tell us about Oregon history or even local history, LeGrand history? It definitely proves that Chinese people lived in LeGrand, which maybe your students do or don't know. Anything else?
So when, a lot of times in civil rights, when you study it, it's like a white versus black issue. And it's depending on where you're at in the country, it may not be a white versus black. It may be white versus Hispanic, white versus Chinese versus whatever the local flavor is.
I definitely think the civil rights movement is what was specifically, thought with for Black rights, but there are other movements where you see sort of the same civil rights movements.
Same having a versus the Board of Education.
Yeah.
You go to California, and was not rural African Americans, all it was
Tate v. Hurley.
At the end, had to so that she could go to school.
Yeah. Another one is our digital collections. This is where the majority of our portal, or our research library materials, including papers, photographs, letters, oral histories, and film lives. So it's a great resource to find primary materials. There are a few short videos that I've linked here that walk through how to use it. They're all less than 4 minutes, so I'm not asking you, or they're not super long. And to get you started, here are some noteworthy collections that might be good places to start looking for primary sources. Vanport, if you're familiar with that, family home movies from a Japanese American family. Our Maps collection has some really great things. And then oral histories from the immigrant story, which is a more recent project. They also have a podcast going on right now. So look through those when you have time. Our museum collection portal has all of our objects in it, and there's over 10,000, and new records are being added regularly. You can browse by collection, or you can browse by subject. So whichever way it works best for you, or you can find things. To give you an example, again, of why this is a powerful resource, it's not just about the objects. Often it also gives you information about who owned it and a story behind it, so it really helps make things personal. For example, this is a bread box, as you can see. It actually is larger than it looks. If you just showed this to students, they probably would be like, why would I care? But when added with this provenance information from Homer Yasui, who was a brother to Min Yasui, who protested the treatment of Japanese Americans, and I'll let Alyssa talk a little bit more about that, but during World War II, he has this memory of hiding in this bread box with his brother in the store that his uncle and his dad owned. So just using these objects, and sometimes there's good provenance, sometimes there's not, to try and personalize history a little bit. Okay. Thinking back over the digital resources slides, so we have the Oregon Encyclopedia, the Oregon History Project, the OHQ, digital collections, and the museum portal. What's one thing you want to try, or one way you could adapt one of these resources for your classroom? I'm just going to give you a minute to turn and discuss with someone near you. I remember being an educator at PDs. It's always more helpful to hear from other educators about their ideas or how they might use it in their classroom. So I'll just give you a minute to decompress and think about ideas that you have. I am finally done sharing resources. And the last thing was just ways to stay in touch. Please sign up for our newsletter to learn about upcoming events, when we have new curriculum, all of those things. Here are some events that are upcoming. There's also a page in your packet. Sadly, the Teaching with Primary Sources Summer Institute is full and closed, so that one isn't available, but the other 3 are. From February to May, we have the Hatfield Lecture Series. We just had Liz Cheney come on Tuesday. So we have notable authors and historians come and talk on a subject, and we are offering $10 tickets for teachers and $5 tickets for students. That includes virtual access, so you don't have to go to Portland and go to the Schnitz to watch it. You can watch it from your own home. So to access that, click on the link. There's a form for you to fill out, and then you get the discount. There is one more in April. The next one that coming up is Ned Blackhawk talking about his new book on Indigenous history, which should be really awesome. During spring break, if you're going to be in the Portland area, we have 2 activities going on with Outside the Frame, which are filmmakers who have experienced homelessness, and they will be Introducing several films, each about 5 minutes long and in formats such as documentary, narrative, comedy, and music. And then in the afternoon, there'll be a workshop that's led by the filmmakers and gives an opportunity for youth to use the museum to create a documentary. So if you will be in Portland, if you have children who are into making movies, please come. And then May 24th, also in Portland, Alyssa and I will be leading a workshop about teaching the Japanese American experience in Oregon using primary sources. It is the Friday before Memorial Day, so if you're not going anywhere and you want to go to Portland, or on your way to the coast, just leave school a day early and come out to OHS, which is where we will be. Finally, some things that are coming soon is we're searching for elementary teachers to be on our advisory council. This helps us, you collaborate with OHS to produce and promote meaningful educational resources and programs. Sorry, secondary teachers, you'll have to wait a year. We are full for that one. If you join, it's a 2-year commitment. You attend 6 bi-monthly meetings a year, and you get a $1,000 stipend for your time over 2 years. Also, if you're interested in using History Day, we will be running next year a rural educator cohort, so it's just for rural educators. You meet for 1 year, 6 Zoom meetings and a $500 stipend, and our Oregon History Day staff walk you through how to implement the program. One more, stay connected. Please contact me if you need to know where to find something, you have an idea for a lesson but don't know where to start, you want someone to collaborate with, anything you need, contact myself or my coworker, Katie Pearson. We are here to help you, and that's it. And I made it through.